football rankings last week. All right, all the people that were whining, okay, about TCU and how what a travesty it was, okay, shut the hell up. I told you it would be fine. It's fine. They win, they move up in the polls. Look at that. Teams lost. Teams are going to lose. This is what happens in college football, okay? So they're fourth in the rankings this week, right? If they keep winning, they'll be fine. Ohio State and Michigan, one of those teams will get eliminated, and TCU will stay in the top 4. I thought they would put Tennessee ahead of them. They didn't, so you even got that going for you, which, by the way, don't get me started on that whole argument.
Yeah, well, I'll just say this. Like, one of the things that I've noticed in college football that's always ridiculous, and this goes back to the BCS era, when you have a week where some high-ranked teams lose, the media, like ESPN and SportsCenter, is always like, oh, my God, there's chaos. And it's like, guys, this is not chaos, okay? The season's not over. They're going to keep playing games. All this stuff works itself out because teams that you think, oh, this team's never going to lose, and then they lose, and then they move down. Or teams like, well, I don't know if they're going to be able to get to move up. It's like, well, if they keep winning, they'll probably move up. So this isn't really chaos, guys. It's just they're continuing to play games, and we'll figure this out. And look, we were talking about this earlier. I mean, basically, the way the college football playoff is going to shake out, I don't know about the exact positioning of everything. Look, if Georgia wins out, including the SEC championship game, they're going to be 1. Okay? Michigan and Ohio State probably going to be whoever wins the Michigan-Ohio State game and then probably likely goes on to win the Big Ten. They're going to be number 2, most likely, because they'll be an undefeated, conference champion in the Power 5, right? And then you got 2 spots left. If TCU goes undefeated and wins the Big 12, they're probably getting in, probably at 3. Because
not probably, they're getting in.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know that they would. Yeah, and I don't think that they would put a 1-loss Tennessee ahead of them. So then it really comes down to, you got those 3 spots, and then it really comes down to the 4th spot. Are you going to take a 1-loss Pac-12 champion, or are you going to take a 1-loss Tennessee? Really, I think that's really pretty much what it comes down to. Now, I guess it gets more interesting if TCU loses. If they're a 1-loss, right. If they're a 1-loss conference champion, if they get like 2 losses or they lose in the conference championship game, that can make things a little more interesting and a little more difficult to kind of figure out where you put all these teams, because like TCU, USC, Oregon, is Oregon out of it now?
So yeah, well, Oregon, UCLA both lost, so they have 2 losses now. So USC is the only Pac-12 team that could end up with 1 loss. So When you say the Pac-12 champion, no, it has to be USC. So yeah.
Well, wait, does the Pac-12 have divisions? I don't remember.
No divisions. So
okay. So USC is in the driver's. Well, they're in the driver's seat to make the conference championship game against some other team.
Right.
Which, could that other team still be Oregon or UCLA?
It's going to be Oregon, UCLA, or Utah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, okay. I think it would have to be USC, but then it comes down to USC versus Tennessee, and that's kind of I don't know. I guess I would kind of favor Tennessee.
Yeah, look, I think if Georgia wins out, it makes this stuff really easy. There's not really many teams to overtake TCU as long as they keep winning. Right. So that's what it comes down to. So this is. Well, I just want to do this. I'm going to give my overview. This is how I see college football this year. Okay, I think Georgia's the best team. Then there's a pretty sizable gap. Okay, then there's Tennessee. Okay, then there's a little bit less of a gap, and then Michigan and Ohio State, and then there's basically like just a dividing line underneath them. Very tiny little ditch between Ohio State, Michigan, and then TCU, USC, LSU, and everybody else.
Right.
So I think it's it's clearly obvious. I don't understand how people could see it differently. Like, this seems just obvious to me. Georgia basically took Tennessee apart.
Yeah.
Okay. After Tennessee, had blown out LSU on the road and beat Alabama by a field goal, Georgia annihilated them.
Yeah.
So I don't understand anybody like why we think, you can put the rankings any way you want. Okay. Ohio State and Michigan are not the second best teams in the country. TCU is not the fourth best team in the country. So we can debate all of that stuff all we want. Now I understand somebody has to get in.
Yeah.
Okay. So I get that. But no, TCU's in really good shape. And everybody complained. Like every article I read, every podcast I watched or listened to, everyone's complaining that it should be merit based. This is what the rankings should be. They should be merit based.
Yeah, like Joel Flatt's been saying. Right.
Right. If that's true, then Tennessee should be ahead of TCU.
Right.
Okay.
Because they
beat Alabama.
Yeah.
They beat Alabama and LSU and Kentucky. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, what are you talking about? Okay. If it's merit based, then TCU is not in the top 4. Like, stop with this nonsense about merit-based. This is a subjective poll. We're doing the best we can. I saw a tweet from Danny Cannell today. We should really it's a shame that we have to pay attention to style points. When we get a 12-team playoff, we can eliminate style points. And I said, first of all, that's complete bullshit. We're not eliminating style points because whoever gets 13th is going to complain that they didn't get in. So style points are going to matter because you're still going to have to rank the teams.
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to automatically get in if you win your conference, but they're going to complain about, well, we're 7 and we should be 5th. That's what's going to happen. So get ready.
Yeah.
Style points are going to be exponentially increased.
Well, and
based on
look,
this.
when you're ranking stuff like this, to say of course that fucking matters. Because in the NFL it doesn't matter except for people on sports radio and like us doing podcasts, like talking about, I think this team's better than this team, But in the NFL, it doesn't matter because you get in based on your record, and then it's a series of tiebreakers. Okay, we don't have that in college football. It's your record, who'd you beat, did you lose to anybody, how much did you lose by? If you beat these teams, did you blow anybody out? How did you guys look? Do you have some really impressive players on your roster? Do you have a bunch of guys on your team that are probably going to be drafted in the NFL? How many people are watching your games? How big are the games that you're playing every week? Did you beat this big team on the road? Like different things like that. Of course, all that stuff matters because at the end of the day, you have teams that are have no losses or one loss, and it's very difficult to that's what you have to look at to kind of go, well, this team is better than this team. Because how else are you supposed to do it?
Uneven schedules, uneven talent. Some teams have conference championships, some teams don't. Some teams are in division, some teams aren't.
Well, and even look, last year Cincinnati got in. Were they the 4th best team in the country? No, but they got in, so I'm fine. I think the committee does a good job with. I think if we just sat here and go, who do you really, really think are the 4 best teams in the country, right? It would be different than what the committee is going to end up ranking the top 4 at the end of the season. But I think the committee's trying to do stuff where it's kind of like, well, okay, you're you have 1 or 2 losses, but this other team is undefeated. You did some things that maybe are as good, if not better, than this other team, but this one team's undefeated and they won their conference, so we're probably going to rank them above you. I'm fine with that. It's not necessarily the best way to determine who's better than who, but I'm fine with that, and that's pretty much what they do. So I don't, people complaining that it's unfair. I really don't think it's really that unfair. I think they pretty much every year get it right.
Yeah, I agree. I think the committee has a tough job, and I think quibbling over they should be 4th, not 7th, is just nonsense. Because it's all basically going to get worked out for them for the most part. The committee doesn't even really have to do that much work. So I think, I was saying last week I didn't think there'd be 2 SEC teams in the playoff. Well, yeah, now I think there will be because I think Tennessee is going to win the rest of their games. Tennessee's resume is so strong that I don't see any way that they're kept out, and I don't think there's enough quality teams behind them to keep them out. The monkey wrench
just doesn't have the. I mean, okay, so USC, if they get to the Pac-12 championship game, they play. You said they'll play Oregon, UCLA, or Utah,
right?
Okay, so if you
most likely Oregon,
right? Okay, so if you beat them, that's a quality win. But other than that, I mean, they lost to USC. What did they lose to Utah?
Yeah.
Okay. But they lost, that was a close game. It kind of came down to the end. So, but I just don't think USC has really the, and I know some people hate the eye test, but there is kind of the eye test. Like USC, against bad teams, yeah, they put up a lot of points, but defensively they don't really seem to be up to par.
You don't need to use the eye test. Look at the numbers.
Yeah.
Teams are scoring 35 points a game on them.
Right.
Okay, they're getting lit up. Okay, like you don't need to, this is obvious. Like this isn't this isn't graduate level stuff. This is very simple. USC's defense is not good. Their offense scores a lot of points. You would have thought the same thing about TCU, except this weekend, they had a defensive battle with Texas on the road and they won.
Yeah.
So I got to give TCU credit for it. They didn't fall behind. They didn't have to make some furious comeback. They played good defense. They held Texas down the whole game. Texas has a lot of talent, and they won the game. So give TCU credit. But I think it's. I just think now if LSU beats Georgia, I can't tell you what's going to happen. That's one of those scenarios.
I'm kind of rooting for that because that would be pretty interesting. I don't really think that LSU can pull it off because they're just too, they're still kind of getting their stuff together, and I just don't think they can put it all together enough to beat Georgia. But yeah, that would be pretty interesting. I mean, kudos to Brian Kelly because his first year, what are they? They're 8-2, so they've got 2 games left. They're already into the SEC championship game. So he could finish the year with 10 wins in the SEC championship game. So that's pretty damn. So LSU is it seems to me like they're going to be,
I think
them, Georgia, Bama. They're kind of the Tennessee, I guess maybe too. They're kind of the teams at the top of the SEC right now.
I think what would happen is what honestly is most likely to happen is if LSU were to win that game, they would still keep Tennessee in front. Tennessee and Georgia would still be kept in front of LSU. I think they would make the Ohio State Michigan winner number 1, Tennessee number 2, TCU number 3, and then put Georgia at 4. I think that's what would happen because I just don't see any way LSU with 2 losses that they would, even if they won the conference, I don't think they would put them in. Now, if they go in and beat Georgia 59-0, then we have a different conversation.
Right.
And listen, I don't think LSU's playoff material, so it's fine. I don't care if they don't get in. They're not ready to win the championship this year. They've had a hell of a year. Like they've got, next year, by the way, LSU could be scary good. Look out. They could win the whole thing next year. But yeah, I think that's probably what would happen in that scenario. But I think we're in pretty good shape as far as the playoff goes. I think it's Georgia's going to get in. Whoever wins the Big Ten, TCU's going to get in. Then I think it comes down to Tennessee's going to get in, and then it comes down to TCU versus a 1-loss USC. And if TCU's undefeated, I think they'll be fine. But USC. Well, the thing is, USC's resume will look a lot different in a few weeks than it does now, because they got to play UCLA on the road. If they beat them, they play Notre Dame, and then they play Oregon or UCLA or Utah, whoever in the conference championship game. That'd be 3 pretty good wins. So right. I think USC's resume might be good enough at that point to overtake TCU. But TCU's in good shape. They got Baylor, then they have Iowa State, and then the conference championship game. Baylor's not a great team. They got blown out by Kansas State yesterday.
Who would TCU play in the conference championship game, most likely?
Right now, Kansas State is in second place. But
okay.
That could
Kansas
change.
State had an 18-point lead on TCU.
Right, exactly. So that wouldn't be a pushover game. So, I think the Pac-12 is they're kind of in trouble. Because I don't know that USC is going to make it through the rest of these games without losing.
Yeah, it's a little too right.
Because if they played Oregon, by the way, that Oregon-Washington game was incredible. Best game
that
of the
was
weekend.
Awesome. Yeah.
If they played Oregon, I just don't know how they ever stop Oregon's offense.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be tough for me to imagine. They got to go to UCLA to beat them and to play them in the Rose Bowl. UCLA can score like crazy too. So it's not going to be easy for them to get through these next 3 games. So I'm not sure they can pull it off. So I think TCU may be in really good shape even if they do lose.
Yeah.
And I think the ACC's kind of they have an outside shot. Clemson and North Carolina both have 1 loss, but I think they're kind of done. I don't think they'll get ranked high enough to get anywhere close. So unless they have massive chaos, Yeah. Anyway, so we'll talk about the games a little bit. I mean, Oregon Washington was incredible. Oregon had every chance to win, and I feel like the coach kind of screwed it up at the end there. They go for a 4th down in their own territory with like a minute left, and Bo Nix was on the sideline ready to go. I don't know why they didn't call timeout and just, figure out what they were going to do at that point. Breaking news, Dallas Cowboys are going for it on 4th down in overtime, and Dak Prescott got sacked. So now Green Bay has got to have the ball at midfield. All they need is a field goal to win. Anyway, so yeah, I thought that was the best game. Alabama took care of Ole Miss. That was an exciting game. Ole Miss had the ball at the end with a chance to beat them, but they couldn't pull it off. So that was an exciting game. LSU managed to hang on to beat Arkansas. That was a bit of a nip and tuck battle. It was 37 degrees in Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is kind of unusual for November. So that was, you could tell watching the game, that was a bit of a struggle. Southern teams playing in cold weather, and you knew LSU wasn't going to be at their best after having that huge emotional game last week.
Well, and I will tell you this: I happened to be watching that game. And Arkansas got screwed on a call at the end of that game because LSU threw a pass to try to get the first down, and the guy caught it. He was short of the first down. When I watched the play live, he was short of the first down. I knew it, okay? And then you're watching the replays. You're like, he didn't get the first down. They didn't even measure, okay? And the coach for Arkansas was just screaming at the officials because, at that point, Arkansas was trying to get the ball back, because it would have been 4th down and the LSU was in their own territory. So Arkansas still had a shot. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but the officiating in college football sucks. And some of the stuff that happens in college football, I'm just like, what? Like, you guys didn't even, like, the coach can't even call for a measurement. I understand it's like really late in the game. It's under 2 minutes, but like, what the hell? Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, everybody else basically took care of business. Georgia took care of Mississippi State, and, Notre Dame hung on to win against Navy, which that was a little bit closer than it needed to be. But yeah, the big upsets were, Oregon losing to Washington, which, Washington's a pretty good team. I don't know if anybody's watched them, but they can score with the best of them. And UCLA got beat by Arizona. I watched the replay of that game this morning. And so listen, I've said the whole season, the Pac-12 and Big 12 are really exciting. They play exciting games, like they're fun to watch, like great conferences. But so we'll see where we're at. We got the big games next weekend. UCLA plays USC and Oregon plays Utah, which basically the two winners of those two games will basically be going to the Pac-12 championship game. So that's really who to watch. And then TCU plays Baylor, and then but everything kind of coming down to 2 weeks from now when we have rivalry Saturday, where we have Michigan, Ohio State, and all of that stuff. So this is interesting. I wrote this down just because I thought this was fascinating. So Kansas, Duke, and UConn are going to bowl games. They are bowl eligible. Texas A&M is not going to a bowl. They already have 7 losses. So these teams they have 2 games left. These teams need to win 1 game in order to be bowl eligible. Miami, Oklahoma, Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Auburn.
Yeah.
Now, if that ain't an upside down year in college football, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
And, the other thing, back to the rankings for a second, I'm sorry, there's no way you're getting 2 Big Ten teams in. Like,
no, bullshit, no.
I don't care who, I don't care if that game between Ohio State and Michigan is the game of the century and it goes 6 overtimes. You're not both getting in. Your resumes are dog shit. They're terrible. It would be an insult to everybody if one of you guys gets in with your ridiculous bad schedules over TCU. Go to hell.
Yeah, that's people say, like Colin Cowherd saying Michigan should be ranked number 1. Dude, what are you talking about? Like, Georgia is clearly the best team in the country. Okay, come on.
Yeah,
did you see what Georgia did to Michigan last year in the playoff?
Yeah, I think this year is really going to be similar for the Big Ten, similar to 2006. I think Michigan and Ohio State are going to play a great game, and everybody's going to be like, "Oh my God, what a great game!" And then whoever wins that game is going to get destroyed in the playoff. Now that may not happen because unless they play Georgia or Tennessee, but I think that's kind of where we're at with it in my mind. So everybody's asking this week, Clark, is the Alabama dynasty over? Paul Feinbaum is saying he thinks the door is closing on it. So,
well, he thinks Brian Kelly stinks, and Brian Kelly clearly does not stink. So, no, I don't think it's over. I think that they lost some close games. They lost in the national championship game last year. They had a close game with Texas, which they won. They had a close loss against Tennessee that they could have won that game. They lost LSU, but LSU had to go do a 2-point conversion in the first overtime. So no, I don't think it's over, but I do wonder, just given the way their team is, can they still get enough of the players that they need to really be able to run the ball really well and kind of now they're receivers. They don't really have great receivers this year, which is kind of different for them. They have this run of really great receivers. A lot of them are playing in the NFL right now. So, yeah, I do kind of question, especially with like if Tennessee's getting better, LSU's getting better. Ole Miss is pretty good. So I do wonder, can they keep that up? I still think they're a really good team. You know, are they going to dominate the way that they were? Maybe not, but I still think they're a national championship contender, you know, pretty much every year. So,
all right. So let me give you some data. So, this will be the 16th season that Nick Saban has coached Alabama. They have won 6 championships. In the first 11 years, they won 5. Okay, in the last 5 years, Alabama has won 1. So, this year, Alabama averages on defense. They averages about 25 takeaways a year. This year, they have 9. So, is the dynasty over? Look, I don't think Alabama's going to be winning the championship every other year anymore. I don't think that's going to be happening. But are they done? No, they're far from done. But I will say, if they're for next season, if Bryce Young is leaving, they better find some upgrades at a few of these positions because without Bryce Young, they have 4 or 5 losses this year. So everybody's saying, well, they're 1 or 2 plays away from being undefeated. Yeah, that's true. They're also 1 or 2 plays away from having 4 losses. So, I think that it's overlooked, and we've talked about this before. It's overlooked how when Saban took over, college football really kind of changed to favor them. Okay,
right.
USC had already fallen apart. Pete Carroll left. Mac Brown left a few years after Nick Saban took over. Right, LSU or Florida was really good at the time. Then Alabama took over. Okay, and the SEC, a lot of these teams have kind of been down, and they're kind of on their way back up. You saw Brian Kelly has got LSU rolling. Josh Heupel has got Tennessee turned into a major threat. You know, Georgia is completely different than Georgia was 10 years ago. So I think the world has changed a little bit, and it's going to be more difficult for Alabama because of the competition around them, not necessarily because Alabama has fallen apart. Do I think the dynasty's over? No, I don't necessarily think the dynasty's over, but like I said, I don't think they're going to win it 2 out of every 3 years anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot to ask for them to win it every other year.
Right.
So,